Hello and welcome to the first video in a weekly series that we're going to be doing at the Carlisle Med Gym on smart core training. One of the biggest problems that we see in the fitness industry at large is a lack of good core training. One of the biggest problems is that most people's core training kind of branches out from an old school bodybuilding type theory on core training, which number one is a bit of a health concern for the low back, and number two doesn't train the core in a real functional manner that we need it to work in real life. So we want to talk a little bit about smart core training and some exercises that we do that train the core in an efficient, functional, and safe manner. So again, the old school theory of training the core is things like sit-ups, crunches, Russian twists, things that bend, twist, flex the lumbar spine, the low back, and that's what we want to avoid with this. Two main problems arise from training the core this way. The first thing is it's a health concern, meaning that if you do a lot of bending and twisting at the low back, you're risking injury. So the first thing when I'm working with a client and I'm giving them exercises is I'm going to ask myself, what's the risk-reward ratio on this exercise? And if we're talking about an exercise that's more risk for injury over either the immediate term or the long term versus the reward we're going to get, then I'm going to not choose that exercise. And when it comes to things like sit-ups, crunches, twisting exercises, the case is that the risk of injury far outweighs the reward of doing it. So Dr. Stuart McGill is one of the most prolific spine researchers and presenters out there. He has come out with a lot of things on how bending, twisting the lumbar spine repeatedly, as in a sit-up and a crunch where you're going through this repeated flexion at the spine, it is the exact mechanism that leads to disc herniations and disc bulges, things that over time will cause stiffening, pain, nerve type irritation, which causes nerve pain down the legs. So things that we definitely don't want to have happen over the course of time at the low back. And so we want to avoid any kind of mechanism that's going to feed into those injury mechanisms. So crunches, twists, we're going to avoid that. The other factor that's in there is the matter of function. So when you talk about function at the low back and at the core, the old school manner of training looks at the muscles of the core, such as the rectus abdominis, which is your six-pack ab, which everyone wants to get. And training for that, they want to flex and relax it repeatedly, which is where you get sit-ups, crunches, twists, things like that. So the problem with that is that the core itself functions a little differently than legs, arms, and other areas of the body that you train with repeated flexion and extension. And so what we want to train with the core, rather than flexing, relaxing, is a stiffening and a stabilization 360 degrees around the low back. And that's what supports the spine, helps to create efficient movement without low back injury. So at the low back, we want to have stiffness, stability, and the core really serves then to transfer force from the lower body to the upper body without creating force by bending and twisting. So we're going to show you a couple exercises, one starting today called the Pallof press, and we're going to do a little bit of a series showing you some better ways to train the core going forward. So I'm going to demonstrate the Pallof press. And so the Pallof press is named after physical therapist John Pallof, who, as far as I know, is the first to describe and popularize this exercise. And really what it is a core exercise that, as I described, creates stiffness and stability around the core. So you're training your core muscles to engage and stabilize, and we're doing that against a rotational force. So rather than a plank, which is another good core exercise, but the plank, you're really having force in the sagittal plane, meaning that gravity is just pushing down the spine, you have to stabilize. So with this, we can actually create a little bit of a rotational force to stabilize against. So we'll take a cable, set it about chest height, moderate weight on here. You're going to pull it out to your chest. A little bit of knee bend, make sure you're not twisting, rotating away from it. You're stable, even between the two legs. And all you're going to do, brace through your core, press straight out, hold. I like to do a 10-second hold, come back in, that's your rest, back out. So you can do that for 10-second holds. You can do it kind of like a plank where you're holding and stabilizing against time. You can do it for reps, just having more of a rapid kind of contract, relax. But generally I like to do 3 10-second holds per set on each side, and we'll do maybe 2 or 3 total sets of that. So that's the Pallof press.